Hey, evening. How we doing, Titans fans? Appreciate you coming. No, it's a sad day in a lot of ways with the end of the Titans tenure of Kevin Byard. I have a friend, I think, who just bought a Houston Oilers throwback for Sunday and beyond, 31 with Byard on it. So that's a tough one for him, but still a good piece of vintage clothing, I would imagine. So come on in, let's hash it out and get going. This element, Trey Wynn is here and says picks player and saves you money. Terrell Edmonds is nothing special as a player. I don't think he's a long-term piece of things here. I doubt it. The picks are, what you're going to get at this stage. Saves you money in 2024. I mean, I don't think the Titans valued Byard as a $14 million cap player in 2024, but the Titans have $80 million of cap room in 2024. Second most in the NFL with 40 or 43 players under contract. They're going to have to pay somebody. So it's not like they needed the money the way last year they needed the money for people. Jason Riley is on his father's account, and he says he's very sad. I know a lot of people are sharing that feeling with you tonight. Jason's son. Yeah, this is something that I don't want to be a party pooper, and I understand why a lot of people are happy that Byard ends up in a good situation. But the number of people who are concerned that the Titans, the Byard trade's done, so good. But like the people who say, I hope they trade Derrick Henry a place where he has a chance to win a ring. I say, look, Greg Nettles was my favorite player ever. I don't even remember if he got traded to San Diego, if he wound up there as a free agent. But I was a Yankees fan. I was concerned with what the Yankees got as a return. So, like, if you're more concerned with where Derrick Henry winds up and the idea that Derrick Henry has a chance at winning a ring, as opposed to what the Titans get back in exchange for Derrick Henry, which if they trade him isn't going to be very much, I don't get that at all. Is it about the team or is it about the player? I think it's a generational change, but too many people concerned with the player, not enough people concerned with the team. Derrick Henry's had a great career here. If he gets traded, you wish him well, sure. But the most important thing is what the Titans get back, not where Derrick Henry lands. I don't understand the preoccupation with that. Or even that, we got to trade Derrick so he could get somewhere where he's got a chance to win a ring. No, you don't. You got to trade Derrick, if you're trading Derrick, to get the best return on Derrick that you can get that helps your team out the most. That's the Titans' priority. That should be your priority as a Titans fan, frankly. I did exchange texts with Kevin Byard earlier tonight. Trying to get my silent on here on my phone. Just to say thanks and goodbye. And he was very gracious, as you would expect. And it was nice that in the flurry of texts that I'm sure he got, that he found a moment to exchange mine. Focus, this is another thing that I'm not sure I agree with entirely. Titans' pass defense has been bad, and the Titans are 2-4 with Kevin Byard. So is it a huge quitting thing to move forward without Kevin Byard? I don't think they were going anywhere with or without Kevin Byard this year. But the idea that they've somehow, completely folded up everything. If this is the only deal they make, and I don't think it will be, it all depends on what other teams do, not on what the Titans do. But Titans were bad pass defense with Kevin Byard this year. Kevin Byard hasn't made a play this year. He's made some good plays in run defense. He hasn't intercepted a pass in 7 games dating back to last season. He thrives on tip balls. The Titans don't tip any balls. Thrives on overthrows. There haven't been many overthrows. And they can get, as Jeremy Martin is saying here, right now, they can get the same production from a cheaper player. I would hope that player is Elijah Molden, but he was out in week 6 with the hamstring issue. He'd already missed one game earlier, I think, with a concussion. He's a guy that has a problem staying healthy. Could be Dane Cruikshank this week. You've got an undrafted rookie at safety. Could be Edmonds in time. I don't think he was sandbagging at all. I mean, I think he was reasonably upset in the offseason about the way things went down and the way they asked him to take a pay cut. It wasn't his fault that they restructured his deal a couple times, which really pushed his numbers up. And, so you go push a guy's numbers up and say that he's done everything the right way and that he's a model citizen for you. And then you ask him to take a cut. And I can understand being upset about that. He resisted that for a good while, a couple times, and then ultimately did it when it looked like there was probably an ultimatum at the point where they got DeAndre Hopkins and he moved $4 million of money around. But I don't think it looked like he was sandbagging. He was playing as hard as he ever did. And I don't think the Titans have effort problems amongst all of the problems that they have. Titans have been off. I think the coaches are probably back today, but their week is structured so that tomorrow's a Monday. And so Vrabel and 2 players will talk tomorrow, and then Wednesday will be a regular Wednesday. Trey wants to get a crack in at J-Rob, and look, it's true. The roster's a mess because of J-Rob. I'll probably write this later in the week, and somebody tweeted me today, like, who on this roster do you absolutely have to have? Have to have. It's not a deep list. Start with Simmons, Skoronski, McCreary, Spears. It's hard to keep going from there. I mean, I don't think you'd want to give up on Burks yet, but Chig, you don't want to give up on him yet, but I don't care about the person that you're talking about, Green Thumb. You shouldn't either. There, like Green Thumb. I like Wiley, but based on what? I mean, he's done very little. You can like him and you can feel promise for him, but it's not like you've got to have him. If Wiley disappeared right now and you replaced him with a replacement level tight end, there'd be no difference. Well, look, the scouts report to the GM. The GM has final say. All right. Now, Robinson didn't do enough with the scouting staff, in my estimation. And Rand Carthon came in and did one draft with the scouts and made 0 changes to the scouting staff. 0. That's how loyal the Titans are to this group of scouts who were, Stonehouse is a keeper, absolutely, Trey. That's how loyal this organization is to this group of scouts for some reason. This group of scouts who collectively have helped 2 general managers create 14 picks in the top 3 rounds, of whom 2 are contributing in a positive fashion right now, Roger McCreary and Peter Skoronski. I have my fingers taped up. I don't repair anything. I'm not handy at all. I decided I was going to try to repair this LG TV we have that has some issues. And I found 2 YouTube videos talk me through how I was going to do it. And an hour into it, trying to lift one panel off the other, I sliced my fingers on a sharp metal edge. And then I got a little further and a little further, and now the TV repair guy will be here by the end of the week. Who's starting at quarterback on Sunday? I fear it'll be Willis, though my gut tells me it'll be Levis, and I believe it should be Levis. Russell Jones says, build around Simmons and Skoronski. Not promising, but those are your only 2 irreplaceable players right now. You can maybe argue Hooker, but the secondary has been awful. Hooker's overpaid for what he is. I think Hooker's a good player, not great. But he's hurt too often. I mean, people are really down on fifth and sixth round picks. You can get play. David Long was a sixth round pick. Avery Williamson, um, Jayon Brown. They've done well at inside linebackers on that. I wrote a tweet earlier today. I mean, they don't have a good enough history with those picks, but you should. Carl Klug, Jason McCourty, Bo Scaife, Robert Smith, Puka Nacua right now is going crazy as a fifth round pick. I mean, there are players to be found there. They're not going to be Kevin Byard necessarily, but you should be able to find functional contributors to your team in the fifth and sixth round on a semi-regular basis. Jayon Brown gone too. Well, I mean, the plan was for Jayon Brown to replace Avery Williamson and for David Long to replace Jayon Brown and for Monty Rice to replace David Long. Now that fell apart there and they went out and got Al-Shaair. I just said Nacua, yeah. Look, I don't think there's a big market for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is approaching 30. He's got 11 games left that'll cost you $6.5 million. And to be super effective, he needs a big workload. So you're going to turn your offense somewhat. To get the best out of Derrick Henry, you need to give him a lot of work. Well, if you're a contending team, you probably don't have a lot of work to give. You probably have 10 carries to give. Well, Derrick Henry at 10 carries isn't at his best, and he's not worth $6.4 million the rest of the way. So I don't think he has great value. Danico Autry's 33. I'd like to have him on my defensive line or as an outside linebacker if I needed pass rush help. I'd make a bid for Danico Autry, but he's worth a fifth or a sixth or my fifth for your sixth or something like that. Tier Tart, great run stopper, but he's got a toe issue and he seems to have been at odds with the Titans coaches, which would make me wary. Who am I forgetting? DeAndre Hopkins is the best trade chip the Titans have. He'd be worth a fourth, maybe a third. But, I don't know if somebody's going to come knocking for him. Christian Fulton is a reclamation project, but if you're struggling at corner and you say, hey, maybe we could get this guy in and get him straight in 2 weeks and he can help us in a struggling thing. Tannehill, is now hurt in a way that you can't be sure by Halloween that he's healthy. I mean, if Levis is playing on Sunday, they got to get the ball out of his hand quickly. You don't want him to get killed behind this bad pass protection. Titans have no third. They had no fifth. They had no sixth. They still have no third. And the fifth and the sixth that they have, presuming the Eagles finish well, will be late in those rounds as opposed to early in those rounds where the Titans would be picking. Everybody, if you could retweet that we're having this conversation, that would help it grow. And that would be helpful. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. That would help. If you're on Facebook, share. That would help. If you're not part of Zen Sports, download the app. Use TNPaul as your code. Bet $10. Get a free membership to paulkuharsky.com. If you're already a member, I'll tell you about it at membership. But basically, once you bet $250, with which I'm sure you're going to win a ton of money, they'll give you $250. I don't expect Farley's going to be back. I think he's going to sit the year on PUP, and that's going to be that. Yeah, Zen Sports is Tennessee. That's great if they get the better of the Eagles picks in the fifth and the sixth. I hadn't seen exactly what the Titans. Oh, okay. So all right, here's Sam. The fifth belongs to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is not bad, though, not as bad as the Titans. And the sixth is the Titans pick back that they traded for Ugo Amadi, which was a ridiculous, horrific trade. Yeah, dig up. You need some good players to build around, but Byard only has 1 year left. His game is diminishing, and he's worth 14. He's due $14 million cap hit next year, which his play is not commensurate with. So if you're getting younger and looking to do new stuff, um, that's not how you start. Yeah, I mean, Will, this idea that the only standard is winning a Super Bowl. Like if AJ Brown was here and they hadn't made that trade and gotten significantly worse by making that trade, they would have been a better team. And it's okay to be a better team that goes, uh, you know, that has success. It's perfectly fine. You know, would they've had a better chance to go to the playoffs, go further in the playoffs? Absolutely. What's wrong with that? Like being in the playoffs is closer to being in the Super Bowl than being terrible. You get in the tournament, you take your chances. I mean, this thing where it's like the Super Bowl or bust is a ridiculous standard for fans of the Tennessee Titans to hold. A ridiculous standard. I hope that they're not in position to take another quarterback next year. This in 2024 draft. I mean, it's conceivable they end up high enough for Caleb Williams or Drake May. Chicago has Chicago's pick and Carolina's pick, and those are the two worst teams in the league in my estimation. I don't think the Titans are going to be in range of either of those two guys. Now, they could be high enough where you say they should trade up and get one of those two guys. I don't think you get a verdict on Will Levis, no matter how much he plays. If he plays, the remainder of the season, 11 games here, I don't think you get enough of a verdict, and I think you've got to go forward with him until you get a substantial verdict. I understand you could be in a situation where there's something too good to pass up, but boy, is that some roster mismanagement where you're going to spend a third, a second and a second that you traded up for, and a first that you would conceivably trade up for to get quarterbacks. So, do you sell all out to get the quarterback who is your solution? Yes, but then you have two guys that you took with high picks who aren't guys who play for you. It's a terrible, terrible building job. Tannehill pulled himself out. He didn't really pull himself out, but I mean, he told them, he was candid with them, and he told them he couldn't play. He couldn't play effectively, couldn't push off. The interception was a result of his inability to push off and get enough onto the ball. So he did the reasonable thing, and he told his trainer, who told his coach the truth, and they went to an alternative. Ryan Tannehill's tough. You can say all you want about Ryan Tannehill, but at the top of the draft is where you find a premier left tackle. Premier left tackles don't get to free agency. There aren't any slated to get to free agency. Yeah, well, here's the idea, Caleb, is keep your good players, try to get more. They don't have many good players. Of their last 14 picks drafted in the third round or higher, 2 are currently playing a relevant role on this football team. And I would imagine they intend to, see long range jobs for both Roger McCreary and Peter Skoronski. But do you want them to keep Darrington Evans? They don't care what the league wants. They care how they win games. And while they have Derrick Henry, going with Derrick Henry helps them win games. Going with Tyjae Spears helps them win games. You want them to pass more so they have to protect more? Well, then whoever's playing quarterback is going to get killed because Andre Dillard is a key to protection. Chris Hubbard, who needs help, is a key to protection. Passing more is not a solution. Now, if you're talking philosophically long term, yes, draft freaking good offensive linemen, learn how to protect, and be more of a passing franchise. Absolutely. Robert, Taney's not getting traded. Taney's got an ankle. He's probably still in a boot. The trade deadline's October 31st. Nobody's trading for an injured quarterback. It seems like Jeff, it seems like a trade. I'm sorry, it seems like a rebuild would take forever, right? They have so many holes and so little depth. Um, you know, you hope they could draft well and fill in around. I don't have a lot of faith that left tackle, elite cornerback, and the big time kind of wide receiver they need is coming in free agency. But if you can deal with those in the draft and fill in the other stuff around them with your $80 million in free agency, which is only 40 or 43 players, and you need to get that to 51 and then to 53, feels like it would take a long time. But teams do it. Teams that are well managed do it relatively quickly. Now, does that mean that are Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel going to manage this team well? I don't know. If they got Marvin Harrison Jr. the way TK wants them to, well, I don't know that you want the wide receiver before the left tackle. I'd say that. And are they going to use that wide receiver? Yeah, Russell, I talked about Autry and Tart as trade pieces. Autry's old though, and Tart's has a toe issue, and he seems to be at odds with his coaches right now. Neither of them are going to bring great returns. Well, they're going to have a cheap quarterback. I think Will Levis is a starting quarterback of this team next year. You've got a cheap quarterback. You've got a lot of resources to spend in free agency, obviously with a quarterback on a rookie deal. And, that's a way to build. And you have 3 years of Levis on that cheap price tag. I don't think he said the offensive line was not a problem. I wasn't at the Monday press conference. I read the transcript. I think your paraphrase is not accurate. They can certainly find players, David, in free agency. I just don't think they could find the kind of left tackle that they need, probably not the kind of cornerback that they need, and probably not the kind of wide receiver that they need. Those, to me, are 3 positions you need to draft and develop. Why are you cutting Willis? There's no reason to make a move with Willis during an offseason. You have him into training camp. You work with him during an offseason. You have him into training camp. At worst, he's your third next year, potentially your second. I mean, you could do worse as a second. I don't think he's got I don't think he's a future starter. I don't think I spent the whole offseason saying that. I mean, the goal is always to win a championship, But I consistently say there's no shame in making the playoffs, and that saying Super Bowl or bust for a team like this is ridiculous. There's only Super Bowl or bust scenarios uh, for teams very infrequently. You know, I mean, Philadelphia could come into this season saying, win a Super Bowl or bust, but even that is unlikely and kind of a ridiculous goal, considering that it's incredibly infrequent that a team that loses the Super Bowl gets back to the Super Bowl, better yet, gets back to the Super Bowl and wins it. The goal is to win a championship, not just make the playoffs. But there's no shame in getting into the playoffs and failing to win a Super Bowl. And you guys, a ton of you guys make it like, well, if they're good enough to get in the playoffs, but they're not good enough to make the Super Bowl, then you might as well just tear the whole fucking thing down. There's no point to it, which is just ridiculous. I mean, 14 teams make the playoffs. You take a playoff spot if you can win a playoff spot. And the reason for the Titans to go into this season thinking that they could win a playoff spot, those were not ridiculous rationale. The rationale was it was a weak division and that they still had a good enough core to get there. Now, it turns out, it looks like they were wrong. I still hate to break it to you. It's conceivable that they could beat Atlanta and Pittsburgh and be 4-4 a week from Thursday. I don't see it happening, but Atlanta is not a great football team, and Pittsburgh has no offense. But I have no problem with the way the Titans came into this season, trying to straddle the present and the future because of their circumstances. And I think ownership doesn't mind the idea of a home playoff gate and getting into the playoffs 3 out of 4 years or whatever it would have been. And I don't think there's great shame in that. It's ridiculous by Caleb Williams. You can't have a stake in ownership in a team that you play on. It's against the NFL rules. Yeah, there's not a singular guy in charge of the Titans. Amy Adams Strunk is in charge of the Titans. There is no final say as far as they tell us. But if I had to lean towards who has more power, it's Vrabel. Well, first off, we don't know that other players are being traded away. A, we're not positive that the Titans are trying. B, we're not positive they have suitors for other players. Do others feel or express any culpability in the team's downfall? I mean, everybody involved in them being 2-4 feels responsible for them being 2-4. I mean, now, does Dillard care as much that they're 2-4? Does T.R. Tart care as much that they're 2-4? I suspect not. I suspect those are the guys that Jeffrey Simmons was talking about in the Tottenham Hotspur locker room after the game about who wants to be a Titan and who doesn't, who cares and who doesn't. But I mean, if you got a hamstring injury, you got a hamstring injury. Too many fans are or Tart, I don't believe for a second his toe's not bad. And because a toe is small doesn't mean it's insignificant. You think Eddie George wasn't tough and trying to tough it out when his toe injury was an issue? It's kind of silly. McCreary is absolutely not horrible. McCreary is a fine, quite capable nickelback. I mean, you can't pre-prescribe, right? Because it depends on what's available. But left tackle is the biggest need on this team. It's the biggest influence. It's trickled down impact on everything is the biggest problem. I'm not trying to be positive or negative. I'm just trying to be honest. Well, look, if you don't have the left tackle, it doesn't matter if the quarterback. It was inevitable that Ryan Tannehill was getting hurt this year. It's just a matter of which locker room he was going to be on crutches in or which rib was going to be broken. I mean, you could go in circles about which one you have to have first, but you have to have both. And Ryan Tannehill's proven, look, he's not as good this year as he's been in years past, but with protection, playing the play action game, he's had success in the NFL. Rustin Webster, you all hated him, and he wasn't a very good general manager, but he saw what happened in Seattle when he was there, where they weren't prepared for Walter Jones's retirement, and they struggled at left tackle after that. So when he got here and he knew that Roos was a year away from being done, he drafted Taylor Lewan. And everybody said, "Why are you drafting Taylor Lewan? It's too early." Well, that's why. And John Robinson had no plan. And Rand Carthon had no plan. And Mike Vrabel had no plan for what to do after Taylor Lewan. Now, even last year when Lewan was starting, you had to know you were a year removed from financially not being able to afford him, and you were going to need somebody else at left tackle. And their replacement strategy for Dennis Daly, their backup strategy for Taylor Lewan was Dennis Daly, who they gave up a 5th-round pick for. And then their replacement move was Andre Dillard, who was just about as bad as Dennis Daly. I mean, those are two terrible, terrible personnel judgment moves. Terrible. How do you figure out if Levis is the guy if there's a pass rusher in his face every play? Focus. Well, 80 million isn't just under 100 million. It's 20 million under 100 million. And it also is only 40 or 43 players when they have to have 53 players under contract. So numbers aren't quite on point, Jeff, but yes, they have a lot of money. Look, the Titans totally could have won the Cincinnati. They didn't, right? The result's the result. And Ryan Tannehill played like shit in the Cincinnati game. But with 9 sacks of Burrow, if Tannehill played his typical game, they win that game. They host the AFC Championship game at Nissan Stadium. But it wasn't a mirage. That team that year was good enough team to play at least in the AFC Championship game. For me, if I was a fan of the team, I would have taken an AFC Championship game appearance and taken my chances. That's just me. I'm a Yankees fan. If I could get the Yankees into the ALCS in a given year, I'll take that and I'll take my chances. Yeah, well, I hate to break it to you, but there's not going to be a coaching change after this year, and it'd be a mistake if there was. I've had a complaint about this for a long time that, surely there are guys they wanted to draft who are not on other teams, who are on other teams' practice squads, and I don't understand why they don't churn that enough. I don't know that many teams are calling about Derrick Henry. $6.4 million cap hit for 11 games of a guy who needs a ton of carries. If you need running back help, you're probably thinking 10 carries a game, not 20. And you're seeing him slowing down a little bit. Yeah, well, I mean, why do you think? Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, Tony, but why do you think they're not the Jets who never get it right, or Detroit, who's may finally be getting it right for the first time since the 1950s, or Cleveland, who never does anything right? I mean, Titans are a middle of the pack team that flashes once in a while. But a lot of you Titans fans don't seem to have the context of the league in place and feel like somehow that they're, Detroit or the Jets or, uh, these teams that have never done anything. And they're not. I mean, they've been in the playoffs more often than not in recent history. And you guys act like that doesn't count for anything. It does. Green Thumb, I think you're not a member of this site. You need to join it because you keep talking about the media and you're listening to some idiots. They don't know more than you. And they don't know more than me. I'll tell you that for a fact. Vrabel being in Foxborough, you should be proud of it. You should be proud that you have a head coach who, on his week off, A, cares enough about the National Football League, and B, is respected enough by one of the great organizations in the National Football League to be invited up, given the red carpet, and put in the Hall of Fame of one of the, the best franchise of the last 20 years. That's fantastic. Why would you begrudge him that? What should he be, in a dark office for 24/7 looking at film? That's not how it works. Sometimes you got to turn the lights off and go recharge your batteries. And for his recharge your batteries weekend, he still wanted to be close to football. He wanted to go see his old friends at his old office and be celebrated. How could you hold that against the guy? Because if you're rebuilding, you're looking for picks to get your own young players who develop in your system, not somebody else's players that they want to cast off. And the kind of players you're talking about cost a lot of draft capital and have contracts that have big numbers on them. It's not just one thing. It's a couple things. A.J. Brown, Isaiah Wilson, Caleb Farley. We can go on and on. We know the list. I don't think Vrabel's seat is that hot, and I don't think it should be that hot. Yeah, recapping my thoughts on Kevin Byard trade. I mean, it's sad to see him go. He's obviously been a great pro and a very good player here for 7+ years. He won the first Good Guy Media Award that we gave out last year, pretty much unanimously. There wasn't any conversation about anybody else. We may have done a secret ballot, but I mean, we could have just all raised our hands. Terrific guy. I exchanged texts with him earlier. I think it's very cool that in the billion texts I'm sure he got today that he took the time to return mine, where I thanked him for being such a stand-up guy and so easy to deal with and so helpful to me over his section of my career covering the Titans. But the Titans have a really bad pass defense with Kevin Byard right now. And it makes sense for them to start to get all the draft capital they can. They were out of the third round, out of the fifth round, out of the sixth round. They're now back in the fifth and sixth round with the Bucks pick in the fifth round with their own sixth round pick back from the stupid Ugo Amadi trade. These picks aren't gold, but you want to have them. And the Titans need to hit with some of those picks. And you don't have a chance to hit with them if you don't have them. And that's the way this team needs to be rebuilt, is through the draft. Hopefully Elijah Molden's healthy enough to start in that spot, and there won't be a massive, massive drop-off. If it's not him, got an undrafted rookie or Edmonds coming in. Or Dane Cruikshank would be the second choice, really. Two players have gone from the Titans to the Eagles of note. 2 of 53. That's a tiny fraction, but the Titans are the Eagles' farm system. I mean, I don't think there are that many guys the Titans have to keep. I'm going to write this story soon. I mean, I don't think there's going to be that mammoth of a turnover, but I mean, this year's team was 47% new, right? And I think, there's a lot of one-year contracts. I think they'll resign the guys who have been good. I would think Brunskill will be here longer term. I think Al Shazier will be here longer term. But, outside of Jeffrey Simmons, Peter Skoronski, who are the pillars on the defensive and offensive line, I don't think there are a ton of guys on this team that you're like, my God, if he was gone, they'd be dead without him. I mean, they're guys you want because you need numbers. Well, Dillard and Daly were pro guys, so pro personnel came up with them. But first and foremost, all of these guys are come up with or signed off by the GM. So Dillard is first and foremost on Rand Carthon and on Mike Vrabel. Daly is on John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. Farley, it was definitely a John Robinson guy. Wilson is on John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. I don't know why you want to go track down their underlings who signed off on them and not pin the blame on the boss who the buck stops with, who signed off on the work of the low-paid underling, whose job it is to write up a report, make a presentation to the boss, and then the boss, does a yay or nay and ultimately makes a decision on that guy. So, I mean, if you go look up the Titans scouts, you see who the Southeastern scout was who covered, the SEC in Wilson's year. That was the primary scout on Isaiah Wilson. I think it's entirely possible. I said this earlier that the Titans beat Atlanta and Pittsburgh back to back. I think Vrabel's the main power source here, but it's harder for him to give up a guy who's going to help him conceivably win games because he's got a shorter leash, and the wins and losses are pinned more on him. People have overestimated, Brett, what the Titans pieces are worth on the trade market since the beginning of this thing. People telling me that Derrick Henry is going to bring a second or third. Derrick Henry will bring far less than they got if they trade him. He's going to bring less than they got for Byard. Only guy worth more than Byard is Hopkins. Hopkins could bring maybe a third or a fourth. It's just not. All of them have something wrong. So Byard slowing down a little bit productivity-wise, and next year he's got a cap number of $14 million. Those things in a trade cost you value. So maybe he was worth X, but then when you consider that he's 30-something and his production is down and he costs $14 million next year if you want to keep him for the second year of his contract, that comes out to a fifth and a sixth and a bad player. Why would you cut Dillard? Like, who you're replacing him with a guy that's conceivably, in their eyes, worse than Dillard. This cutting guys in season is ridiculous. I would try Skoronski outside and play probably Radens at left guard for a little while, see if it's better. If it's not better, switch it back. So you want to fire Rand Carthon after one season for not addressing needs. Well, he addressed the need. He struck out at left tackle. They need a long-term quarterback to replace Tannehill. So he addressed that need, seeing that Willis wasn't good enough. And he's in on these things with Vrabel. So you're going to fire him after 1 year? I mean, you just have no idea how the league works, or no idea for patience. What business do you work in where does a guy get fired for making long-term moves before you see how the long-term moves pan out? It's ridiculous. Thank you. I have no idea how Levis will do. Not seeing anything. I don't know that Levis is playing. Who cares? Who cares? I mean, Simmons, who's not playing well, has clout. He's got stripes. He's a good player. Who gives a fuck if T.R. Tart is put off by what he said? Here's what T.R. Tart needs to do. Get healthy, get on the field, and contribute. We're worried about T.R. Tart's feelings? Really? Like, everybody says, What we need is accountability. We need somebody to call these guys out. Then somebody kind of, pretty subtly calls these guys out. And then you go, oh, is Tier Tart handling this okay? Is the tissue boy at his shoulder providing him with enough Kleenex? Come on. I do not think that Edmonds is securing this spot anytime soon. I think it would go to Molden if he's healthy very quickly. Zara, get out of here. You're ruining the chat with your nonsense. You're uninvited. Not re-signing Conklin Corpus was a reasonable move. Look, it's okay to not re-sign Conklin. You're not going to be able to pay your left tackle and your right tackle huge money in the financial state that they were in. The problem isn't letting Conklin go. The problem is fucking up replacing Conklin. Don't draft Isaiah Wilson. You can't miss that badly. If you just get a reasonably good right tackle to replace Jack Conklin with, you're fine. There wasn't really anybody great out there in the left tackle market, which is why you have to draft a left tackle, probably last year. I think Cincinnati will re-sign T. Higgins. I think Cincinnati will keep its offensive core together. Titans will try to win games while getting draft picks for Byard and conceivably for others if they continue along the path. I don't know where I compared the NFL and the MLB, Keith Hill, but remind me. Ballard paying Taylor was ridiculous. Zach Moss is doing just fine, proving the point that you can replace a running back, and then he goes and pays his running back. That's ridiculous. The guy went to Florida, so he can't come in and do good. Mike Vrabel went to Ohio State. See how bad he was for the Titans in his first couple of years? Because he can't understand because he's from Ohio, and he went to Ohio State. He played in get this, he played in Pennsylvania, he played in Massachusetts, and he played in Missouri. How the fuck could he possibly understand Tennessee? There's nothing you have to understand about Tennessee to field a successful football team in Nashville, Tennessee, in the NFL. It's not college. This guy's got to get out of the room. You can't become Detroit and the Jets because you have to be bad for 40 years to be Detroit and the Jets. And in those 40 years, the Titans went to several AFC championship games and the Super Bowl. Get out of my room. Yeah, going to be around Belichick, whose team is as bad or worse than the Titans this year, really would have re-energized him. I mean, Belichick's not done anything the last couple of years. When's his last playoff appearance? It's not as recent as Mike Vrabel's, is it? No, he couldn't have walked for nothing. He would have had to have been cut. But yes, would you rather have this for Byard now or cut him for nothing in March? Practice squad player from another team warrants a minimum first year contract to be on your 53. Will says, in order to be in a Super Bowl window, you have to be able to beat an elite quarterback in January, which the Titans never could do. Therefore, they were never in a Super Bowl window, except they beat Tom Brady in New England and Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, I think in his MVP year. So your argument goes straight out the window. Yeah, it's open to everyone. Just the one guy's having a real problem. I think left tackle is a premium for a reason. The best pass rusher is on the edge over there, no matter how good the interior guy is. And you have two interior line blockers built to block that one interior guy. And I'd rather block Jeffrey Simmons than Garrett right now. I'd rather block him than Watt. All right, this has gone nice and long, 51 minutes. You people have been mostly awesome. I'm scrolling down to see what I've missed here. Can never know how long a rebuild takes. A lot of teams have done it way faster than you'd expect, but it does look like it would take a long time because the roster is thin. Got to have a great free agency and draft impact guys in the first 3 rounds, and you don't have a 3rd round pick. Titans aren't looking for a participation trophy. I don't know what that's about. I appreciate you. If you're not a member of paulkuharsky.com, join Zen Sports. Use TN Paul, all capital letters. Bet $10. Boom. Free membership to paulkuharsky.com. We have conversations like this all the time, except without the riffraff. Once a week, usually at halftime of Thursday Night Football, then from the press box after the game every week. It's worth the price of admission just for that. But you get Blake Bedingfield's scouting previews and reviews, Mike Herndon's analytical column every Wednesday, everything that I write, all kinds of insight from the locker room, from the press conferences, from everywhere. Come join us. To my loyal following, I appreciate you, and I urge everyone, don't block the box, but be sure, please, to lock your locks. Send this around and tell everybody to rewatch. I appreciate all of you. Have a